Dawn rises slowly over the sprawling marshland, painting the flooded world in soft tones of silver and pale gold. The juvenile awakens underneath a cluster of bent reeds, its small frame warmed by faint pockets of lingering night heat still trapped within the muddy shelter. It blinks cautiously, adjusting to the shifting brightness while listening to the soft rhythm of water lapping against exposed roots. Every sound is crisp in the early quiet, and every breath carries the cool scent of minerals drifting across the wetland. The juvenile moves gradually, still immune to the weight of its own growing limbs. It pushes upward, careful not to slip as mud shifts beneath its feet. A thin mist curls around its legs as it steps into shallow water, testing its balance while tiny ripples radiate outward into the calm. Fish beneath the surface scatter at the first vibration, creating a flurry of motion that fascinates the young creature. It watches intently, leaning closer as the shimmering shapes reorganize in layered spirals. The juvenile tries to lunge, instinct driving it forward, but its timing falters. Its snout breaks the water too late, and the startled fish dart away in synchronized flashes. For a moment, the juvenile stands frozen, absorbing the lesson written in waves that fade slowly across the surface. A breeze sweeps across the plain, bringing new scents, distant vegetation, drifting silt, and the faint musk of an older predator somewhere upstream. The juvenile lifts its head and sniffs softly, uncertain but curious. It moves toward a narrow inlet where mud forms uneven ridges. Each step becomes a delicate test of stability. Tail raised, it uses instinctive motion to counterbalance its awkward gait. Reeds brush against its sail with faint rustling sounds, and droplets slide down its skin where morning dew begins to evaporate. The young creature observes everything: the sway of reeds, the texture of the mud, the stuttering shadows cast by darting insects. A small amphibian splashes nearby, sending brief tremors through the water. The juvenile reacts instantly, swinging its gaze toward the disturbance. It steps closer, lowering its snout, watching faint circles of ripples expand around the point of impact. The amphibian disappears beneath submerged roots, leaving only swirling sediment behind. The juvenile lingers, studying the movement until it settles. It is learning, slowly, patiently, the cause and effect of its environment. As the scattered morning light strengthens, the wetland begins to stir. Insects crawl over sun-warmed leaves. Pale birds lift from their nests, sending echoes across the water. The juvenile watches one of the birds glide low against the wind, mesmerized by the graceful motion. It takes a tentative step toward the open flats, drawn by the shifting brightness of sunlight reflecting off countless small pools. The ground changes subtly as it moves from muddy textures into firmer sediment. This new surface encourages confidence. The juvenile increases its pace, splashing lightly through shallow water and sending droplets into the air. Every new sensation adds to its growing awareness. The tug of current against its ankles, the softness of decaying leaves under its weight, the rhythm of insects stirring with the heat. Eventually, the juvenile reaches a stretch of broken vegetation where uprooted trunks lie scattered after a previous storm. It climbs a partially submerged log, its small claws gripping into softened bark. From this low vantage, the juvenile surveys the landscape. The horizon stretches outward in wide, shimmering bands, punctuated by dark clusters of conifers and patches of towering ferns. Curiosity pushes it onward. It enters a shaded corridor where the air feels heavier and cooler. Here, the marsh narrows into a tangled passage filled with interlocking roots. Water trickles between these natural barriers, creating soft murmurs that echo in the stillness. The juvenile navigates the path slowly, lowering its body to fit beneath drooping branches. When it emerges on the other side, it finds a pool untouched by wind. The water lies perfectly still, mirror-like, capturing an almost flawless reflection. The juvenile approaches carefully. It stares at its own distorted image, the narrow snout, the small sail, the uncertain stance. A flicker of movement disturbs the reflection, and the juvenile startles backward. Small fish glide beneath the surface, swimming in gentle arcs that distort the mirrored image. The juvenile inches forward again, inspired by the renewed opportunity. It positions itself with deliberate precision, testing improved balance. When the fish drift close, it lunges, but again miscalculates. The water erupts in chaos as the fish scatter, and the juvenile splash sends concentric rings spiraling outward. Frustration ripples briefly through its posture. Its tail stiffens, and its breath quickens. But instinct overrides discouragement. The juvenile steps toward another section of the pool where shadows ripple softly. This time it waits longer, observing how currents shift when the fish move. It studies their rhythm carefully, adjusting its stance with newfound patience. The next strike is cleaner, though still unsuccessful. It is closer, far closer than before. Something clicks internally. The juvenile huffs quietly, a soft sound of recognition, as understanding begins to form. Midday approaches, thick with humidity. The juvenile seeks shade beneath a canopy of fern fronds. Light filters through in broken patterns, flickering over its back as it rests. The wetland hums with life. Distant calls echo across the vast marsh, and subtle vibrations hint at hidden animals moving beyond sight. The juvenile listens, attuning itself to every subtle shift. Later, hunger returns with renewed sharpness. The juvenile follows a slow current drifting between patches of reeds. Here, small prey gather in compact formations. The juvenile lowers its snout near the surface, waiting patiently. When the moment feels right, it strikes. Water thrashes violently, and the juvenile emerges empty-jawed once more. Yet something about its stance afterward suggests progress. It steadies its breath, adjusts its footing, and tries again. Another attempt fails, then another. But each movement holds more focus, more precision, more understanding of speed and rhythm. As sunset draws near, the sky becomes a band of glowing red and gold. Shadows lengthen across the marsh. The juvenile climbs onto a dry mound overlooking the broad wetland. Wind sweeps cool currents across the plain, carrying quiet whispers of nighttime activity. The young creature settles down, folding its legs beneath its body. Its breathing slows as warmth fades from the air. The juvenile glances once more across the shimmering landscape. It has learned something today about patience, movement, rhythm, and the fragile dance of predators and prey. These early lessons mark the beginning of the long path ahead, shaping the instincts it will rely on as the world grows larger, darker, and more challenging. Night settles fully. The marsh exhales a collective calm, and the juvenile drifts softly into sleep. The wet season deepens, and the once fragmented pools now merge into a vast stretch of connected waterways. The subadult stands at the edge of this expanding world, taller now, stronger, and far more attuned to the hidden messages drifting through the marsh. The limbs that once trembled with uncertainty now show firmer control. Muscles trace more defined contours beneath its skin, and the sail rising from its back displays bolder lines shaped by passing seasons. Morning begins with a low rumble of thunder somewhere beyond the southern horizon. Dark clouds gather above the distant marsh, offering brief flashes of pale light. The subadult moves steadily through shallow water, each step creating a muted splash that sinks quickly into the thickening currents. It lifts its head and inhales sharply, distinguishing the aroma of incoming storms from the more familiar sense of wet earth and decaying foliage. The subadult's awareness extends beyond sight. Subtle vibrations gliding along the water's surface provide clues about hidden movement. Schools of fish scatter as it approaches, and clusters of amphibians retreat towards safer burrows. Yet the subadult has learned to conserve energy. It does not chase blindly anymore. Instead, it tracks the rhythm of the current, following the pulse of life scattered throughout the marsh like strands of shifting thread. Eventually, it reaches a channel carved by flowing water. The current is stronger here, creating swirling patterns filled with suspended sediment. The subadult positions itself at the edge of the channel, watching the flow with intense focus. It lowers its snout carefully and waits for the right moment. Fish suddenly dart into view, pushed by the current. The subadult strikes with precision, slicing through the water in a clean, disciplined movement. It emerges with prey clamped firmly between its jaws. The first successful catch of the day brings a surge of confidence. The subadult carries the prey to a nearby bank, where it consumes its meal in relative calm. The wind dips low through towering trees, producing long sighs that echo across the open wetland. Overhead, dark clouds drift closer, promising both danger and opportunity. The storm arrives gradually. At first, only gentle rain falls, creating small rings across the water's surface. Then, without warning, rain intensifies into a heavy downpour that blurs the horizon. The subadult lowers its body and steadies its stance, allowing the falling water to cascade freely over its sail and back. Pools form rapidly, merging into fast-moving torrents that sweep debris across the plain. Lightning flashes. Thunder follows. The world vibrates with the force of the storm. The subadult retreats toward denser vegetation, navigating through tall ferns that bend under the weight of the rain. Its movements remain deliberate, avoiding patches of unstable soil that could collapse under sudden pressure. Water rushes along grooves in the landscape, filling depressions and forming new channels almost instantly. Amid the chaos, the subadult senses motion nearby. A small herd of hadrosaurs emerges through a curtain of rainfall, their calls muted by the storm. They move with urgency, avoiding rising water levels as they hurry toward higher ground. The subadult watches from a sheltered position. It does not pursue. The prey is far too large for its current size and strength. Yet observing the herd offers valuable insight. Their paths reveal safe routes through unstable terrain. When the rain eases, the marsh feels transformed. Sediment has shifted, new pools have formed, and previously submerged ground now stands exposed. The subadult ventures toward a wide clearing where water drains slowly into lower basins. Rays of sunlight pierce the clouds, casting shimmering reflections across the newly formed pools. The air carries a fresh scent, clean, metallic, and rich with opportunity. The subadult tracks small ripples near the far end of the clearing. It approaches methodically, using quieter steps to avoid alarming potential prey. A cluster of fish rests in a trapped pool where water remains deep but movement is restricted. The subadult moves into position. It studies the pool's geometry, learning where currents gather and where fish attempt to escape. The strike is swift. Water bursts upward as the subadult lunges with practiced force. This time the catch is even larger, a reward for its growing skill. It lifts its prey high above the water before swallowing it in strong, steady motions. A sense of progress settles through its posture, reflected in the smoother flow of its movements. As afternoon light softens into a warm golden hue, the subadult makes its way toward an area where vegetation grows denser. Conifers rise overhead, filtering sunlight into broken shafts that scatter across the ground. The subadult steps carefully between exposed roots, avoiding sharp fragments of fallen bark. Here the air holds a different quality, cool, still, and filled with the scent of ancient wood. It pauses beside a fallen trunk carpeted in moss and listens. Something moves in the undergrowth, a small reptile, cautious and hidden. The subadult lowers itself, observing the tiny creature's nervous movements. Instinct urges pursuit, but experience tempers the impulse. The subadult remains still, blending quietly into the filtered light. It understands the value of patience now, and how unnecessary movement can break an opportunity before it forms. The reptile darts suddenly across the forest floor. This is the moment the subadult was waiting for. It steps forward in one smooth motion, guiding the reptile toward a patch of soft soil. A quick strike ends the chase. The subadult lifts its catch carefully, almost contemplative, before consuming it. The reward is small, but meaningful. Every successful hunt strengthens its foundation, sharpening skills it will one day rely upon as an apex force within this ecosystem. The sun begins to sink behind the distant tree line, casting long shadows that creep across the wetland. The subadult emerges from the forest corridor and returns to the open marsh, where cool wind sweeps across fading light. Birds settle into nests high above the water, their calls turning softer as evening settles in. The subadult walks along a shallow ridge, tracing the boundary between land and water. Each step reflects the growing certainty within its instincts. It surveys the stretching plains, sensing the currents of possibility that flow through the environment. This world is difficult, unpredictable, and often harsh, but the subadult has begun to understand its patterns. Night approaches, guided by a soft violet glow that spreads across the sky. The subadult settles beneath a leaning tree, letting darkness wrap around its still-growing form. It breathes deeply, carrying the scent of fresh rain, flowing water, and distant echoes of life hidden within the vast marsh. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new challenges, new opportunities to learn what it truly means to survive in a world shaped by shifting tides and relentless change. The seasons shift again, and with them the entire landscape transforms. The marshland that once felt boundless now stretches even farther, its channels deeper, its currents more complex. At the edge of this evolving world stands the adult, towering and powerful, its presence commanding the full attention of everything that moves in the water or along the mud-packed shores. The sail on its back rises like a dark crescent against the sky, shaped by years of storms, hunts, and relentless adaptation. Morning begins with a slow warmth creeping across the flooded plain. The adult emerges from a cluster of conifers where it rested during the night. Its movements are smoother now, calculated, confident, carrying a sense of inevitability. The muscles along its limbs shift beneath the skin like coordinated machinery, refined by countless repetitions. It steps into the shallow water with practiced grace, sending waves rolling softly across the surface. The adult lifts its head and surveys the waterways stretching into the distance. Every ripple, every vibration, every faint shift in the current tells a story. It listens deeply, filtering through the noise of the waking wetland. Somewhere beyond the reeds, a herd of hadrosaurs moves slowly toward drier ground. Farther still, a distant predator, smaller but bold, splashes into a side channel. The adult notes these details calmly. It no longer reacts with youthful urgency. Instead, it chooses its actions with the patience of an apex creature fully aware of its power. The water thickens with silt as the adult approaches a broad channel carved by seasonal floods. Beneath the opaque surface, shadows flicker like scattered sparks. The adult senses the subtle motion of large fish navigating the deeper pockets of the channel. It positions itself along a stable ledge formed by compacted mud, choosing a point where currents naturally funnel prey. It stands motionless at first, letting the flow reveal patterns invisible to untrained eyes. When movement gathers near its feet, the adult shifts its weight slightly, preparing. It strikes with a decisive force, swift, precise, and entirely free of wasted energy. The water erupts, and a massive fish thrashes violently between its jaws. The adult lifts its prey above the surface, water cascading from its scales in glittering arcs. The kill is efficient. It carries the fish to a dry point along the bank, anchoring it with its claws as it feeds. Thunder rolls in the distance. The adult pauses mid-bite, watching as clouds accumulate over the horizon. Another storm is forming, though its approach is slower than the ones it endured as a sub-adult. It finishes its meal and moves inland toward higher ground. The rising wind carries new scents, fresh mud, blossoming vegetation, and the faint metallic tang of rain on the way. The adult moves through shifting terrain with unwavering confidence. It navigates slopes softened by earlier floods, tests the stability of exposed roots, and adjusts its balance instinctively on patches of unstable soil. Its tail moves like a counterweight, guiding every step with an elegance that belies its massive size. The world around it reacts accordingly. Smaller animals scatter as it passes. Birds launch from low branches, retreating into higher canopies. As the storm approaches, the wetland darkens. A heavy blanket of clouds dims the sky, filtering the light into muted grays. Rain begins to fall, but gently at first. The adult steps into a narrow corridor formed by leaning conifers. Here, the rainfall becomes a soft whisper as branches deflect much of the water. The adult pauses, scenting the air. Beneath the smell of rain lies something familiar, movement in the water, deep and powerful. It approaches a large basin formed during last season's floods. The basin remains filled year-round, its depth attracting larger prey. The adult moves to the rim and lowers its head, scanning the shifting shadows below. A long, serpentine shape glides near the bottom, another predator grown bold within this sheltered pool. It is not a direct threat, but it shares the same hunting ground, and the adult knows the importance of defending valuable resources. The rival predator surfaces briefly. The adult steps forward, sending a deliberate warning ripple across the water. The other creature hesitates, circling slowly, then retreats into the deeper section of the basin. The adult watches until the shadow disappears fully, asserting its dominance not through violence, but through presence alone. Rain intensifies. The water's surface becomes a mosaic of constant movement, blurring reflections and distorting the shapes beneath. The adult steps away from the basin and travels toward the open marsh. Lightning slices across the sky, revealing the vast plain in a single dazzling moment. Thunder follows, rolling heavily through the air. Yet the adult remains composed. It moves with a steady rhythm, adjusting effortlessly to the changing landscape. Temporary streams form beneath its feet, swirling around its ankles as it climbs a muddy incline. The rain forms sheets that flow down the slope, pulling loose sediment with it. The adult lunges upward in powerful strides, reaching stable ground where it can observe the storm safely. From this vantage, the entire wetland stretches outward, transformed by rainfall into a network of reflecting surfaces. The adult stands tall, letting water cascade down its sail. Each drop glides along the grooves carved over seasons, flowing toward the ground in thin trails. The world feels vast, alive, and shifting with purpose. As the storm finally begins to fade, the wetland breathes again. Mist rises from the warm ground. Pools settle into calm, glassy stillness. The adult descends the slope and walks along a winding stream toward the heart of the marsh. Evening colors return, soft golds and pale violets shimmering across the wetland's surface. The adult stops at a familiar ridge, one it once crossed as a sub-adult. It pauses, remembering the journey carved through these waters. Every lesson, every chase, every storm endured has shaped it into the creature it is now. Capable, patient, and fully attuned to the living world surrounding it. Night rises quietly, carrying a cool breeze through the reeds. The adult settles beside the water, lowering its body into the mud. Its breathing slows, its eyes close, and the wetland, vast and ancient, continues its endless rhythm around the resting giant.